Who are the winners and losers of NBA free agency so far? Let's get into this. This was definitely a crazy free agency. We saw a ton of players moving and changing teams this free agency. We saw a ton of teams, especially in the Eastern Conference, all get better basically. We saw the Lakers get significantly better. We've seen a lot of teams just improve overall, just get a lot better. And it's going to be very interesting going into next season to see how they all work out together. But now let's talk about the winners and losers of free agency in my opinion. So first, let's start with one of the winners. In my opinion, would be the New York Knicks. So obviously it was a very successful season for the Knicks last year, and all they had to do coming into this season was really get point guard help and just scoring help for Julius Randle. And when you look at what the Knicks were able to do, they were first able to bring in a guy like Evan Fournier, who's a very good ball handler, can take a lot of pressure off Julius Randle and RJ Barrett, and is an absolute bucket as well. That helps him out. Also, they were able to bring back all the guys that were very important and very crucial to that run last season to the playoffs for the first time in 8 seasons, like Nerlens Noel, Alec Burks, and Derrick Rose. Bringing those 3 guys back, I think, was very important for the Knicks. But on top of that, out of nowhere, out of left field, they were able to bring in Kemba Walker, which is humongous, because even though they didn't really need to change up their roster that much and they brought everybody back, brought in a guy like Evan Fournier, which is a huge upgrade from Reggie Bullock, in my opinion, they still really needed that point guard. And there was a bunch of reports out there that maybe they would try to get a guy like Reggie Jackson, Dennis Schroeder, but there weren't too many guys out there. But out of nowhere, Kemba Walker was actually bought out by the Oklahoma City Thunder, and not only did he go to the Knicks, he went to the Knicks on a 2-year, $16 million per year offer, which is an absolute steal for a guy like Kemba Walker. So overall, I think just based on that, the Knicks definitely are a winner this offseason, and they definitely got better in this better Eastern Conference than it was last season. On paper, the Knicks definitely got better, and in my opinion, I think they are going to be a better team this season than they were last season, especially if they do make it to the playoffs. Now they have more dynamic ball handlers and just scorers to help out Julius Randle overall, but we will have to see what happens during the regular season and how they play together. It's not only just on paper, it's actually how do they fit. Personally, I think it will work out well, but we do have to see how that's going to work out for the Knicks. But now let's talk about a loser, which is the Philadelphia 76ers in my opinion. The Sixers didn't necessarily make a catastrophically bad signing or a trade that they shouldn't have made, but the reason why I have the Sixers on the losers list is because for 2 reasons actually. The first reason is because, as I mentioned before in the video, basically every other team in the Eastern Conference that's potentially contending all got better. You look at the Chicago Bulls, they got a lot better this offseason. The New York Knicks, as I just mentioned, they got better this offseason. The Miami Heat, they got better. The Brooklyn Nets, they're going to get all their healthy stars back. They got better. You look at the Milwaukee Bucks, they just came off an NBA championship. But when you look at the Sixers, they didn't necessarily make any crazy moves or really moves at all, honestly, to get better. So considering they weren't able to get it done in the Eastern Conference last season when it wasn't as good as it's going to be this season, in my opinion, that makes them a loser in terms of this offseason. But this next reason is a little more of a bigger factor than just not doing anything in the offseason. The next factor why I think the Sixers are a loser this offseason is the whole Ben Simmons situation. So obviously Ben Simmons had a terrible playoff performance, and there was a ton of trade rumors immediately after, because not only did Ben Simmons have a bad playoff performance, but there have been a lot of questions over the past few seasons if Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid could even play together. So after them just not winning whatsoever throughout the years, and especially how Ben Simmons performed in this previous playoffs, I think a lot of people thought that Ben Simmons should have been traded, and even the Sixers organization had some rumors going around that they wanted to trade Ben Simmons. So at that point, when you're openly looking to trade Ben Simmons like the Sixers were, and you don't end up trading that guy and he comes back to play for you, that's just a terrible situation, and he's not going to really be that focused, because from Ben Simmons' perspective, the Sixers were just about to trade him in the offseason, so why should he necessarily play for the Sixers team who just wanted to trade him? It's just a bad look, and the locker room won't work as well. It's just not whatsoever. I think at this point the Sixers honestly need to trade Ben Simmons. The price they're asking for other teams is just way too high, and they're going to have to lower their price and just figure out somehow to trade Ben Simmons. I think if you bring him back, it's just going to create a terrible dynamic in the locker room. And I don't even necessarily think that Ben Simmons is a bad player. I actually think he's very underrated, and in my opinion, he could still be a superstar in this league. I think he's a very talented young player in this league, but I just think it's a tough situation, and he should be traded, honestly. But now let's move on to a winner, which is the Los Angeles Lakers. So in my opinion, I think the Lakers actually had the best free agency out of everybody, and they're definitely the winner of free agency in my opinion. They were able to bring in first Russell Russell Westbrook to create a big three core of LeBron James, Westbrook, and Anthony Davis. The biggest thing this Westbrook deal actually does for the Lakers is gives them injury insurance. Last season we saw both LeBron James and Anthony Davis really get hurt a lot of the year, but what Westbrook does is now, just in case of LeBron James or Anthony Davis gets hurt, you have that second guy or third guy in that case, like Russell Westbrook, to still play. So now you would still have two superstars. If LeBron James got hurt, for example, you still have Westbrook and Anthony Davis, and you can stagger their minutes, and whenever Anthony Davis would have to sit down, it wouldn't just be a completely depleted bench. You would still have Westbrook there to help out and really keep the ship afloat and really keep the Lakers afloat until LeBron James is able to get back. I think that's the biggest thing with Westbrook. But on top of that, they were also able to bring in Carmelo Anthony, which obviously brings a ton of scoring, shooting ability, and just a great mind to have in the locker room. That was a very big signing as well, in my opinion. They were also able to bring in smaller players, just add a lot of shooting to their team, which you always need in the new NBA. Also, they were able to bring in a guy like Dwight Howard, which is going to help them out tremendously on the rebounds as well as the defensive end. Overall, I just think the Lakers had such a great free agency, and I think at this point, them and the Brooklyn Nets are definitely going neck and neck for the NBA championship favorites next season. And it's definitely going to be very exciting to watch. Hopefully the Brooklyn Nets can stay healthy, and hopefully the Lakers can stay healthy, specifically LeBron James and Anthony Davis going into next season. But now let's move on to a loser, which in my opinion would be the Boston Celtics. So the reason I personally think the Boston Celtics are a loser is very similar to the reason with the Philadelphia 76ers, and is basically just everybody else in the Eastern Conference that was contending basically got better, but the Celtics really didn't. So the first thing the Celtics did was obviously trade Kemba Walker, which I actually personally think was a good move for them, because first he had a humongous contract, so getting rid of that contract was big. But on top of that, I just don't think Kemba Walker fit in that well with the Celtics team. And when you have a guy like Kemba Walker, you kind of have to give him minutes because he's a very good player. But I just don't think he fit in with them, so I think that's actually a positive for them going forward. They were able to bring in Al Horford in that same trade. I think he's okay. They bring Al Horford back to them. He's definitely a decent player. He knows what he's doing out there. But I don't necessarily think that Al Horford moves the needle for me personally. And going into this season, I don't even know if the Celtics are able to win a playoff series, nonetheless compete for a championship this season. The Celtics really have to make more moves, in my opinion. Last season was definitely a very down year for them, and I think they're going to be better than they were last season, especially after losing Kemba Walker. I think that's a positive for them. But I just think the Eastern Conference overall just got so much better, and I think it's going to be tough for the Celtics to actually do something and make noise in the Eastern Conference based on their current roster. So I think if they want to do anything, they really have to make another move. But that's the reason why I think the Celtics basically are a loser this offseason. It's basically just not improving the roster. But now lastly, let's talk about a winner, which in my opinion is the Chicago Bulls. So last season, the Chicago Bulls kind of went all in at the trade deadline, trading for Nick Vucevic, which was a pretty good move in my opinion, but obviously it didn't end up working out for them, and they honestly just lost too many games and just didn't make the playoffs at all. But obviously during this free agency period, this Bulls organization really liked what they had and decided they need to triple down on what they're already doing and made humongous moves. First, they were able to bring in Lonzo Ball via sign and trade, which in my opinion was a great move for them. He's another young guy to bring into that young core that they have in Chicago, but on top of that, he's a very good young player at this point. He's a point guard, which the Bulls desperately needed. He's a guy who's going to get the ball to everybody in the right spots, make everybody's lives easier for guys especially like DeMar DeRozan now, who they just brought in, Kobe White, Zach LaVine. They have a ton of players on this team that are just very good players, and I think will benefit greatly from having a guy like Lonzo Ball on their team. Lonzo Ball's best trait is just making everybody else's lives much easier and getting them wide open looks. Also, Lonzo Ball is a great defender. I just think Lonzo was a great pickup for the Chicago Bulls organization. And then on top of just picking up Lonzo Ball, they were able to pick up DeMar DeRozan, which is kind of a surprise and a huge move for them. With DeMar, what they get is just a pure scorer. So now they have Zach LaVine, who's a pure scorer, but now to take pressure off Zach LaVine, they have DeMar DeRozan, who's also a pure scorer. And this guy's been getting buckets throughout his whole NBA career. He just knows that he gets buckets. He's obviously not a great three-point shooter, but he's a great mid-range shooter, and he just knows what he's good at, and it's just very efficient from where he shoots from. So I also think DeMar DeRozan is a huge pickup for them, and I honestly think this team should definitely be in the playoffs, at the very least a top 6 team in the Eastern Conference, and honestly, they have a team good enough to win a playoff series, but we'll see what happens when it comes to the regular season. But I really do like what the Chicago Bulls were able to do this offseason. But overall, those are my winners and losers of the NBA free agency. But anyways, let me know in the comments what you guys think. Do you agree with my picks, or do you think I missed some picks, or do you think I got some picks wrong? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, please leave a like and subscribe and hit that post notification bell. It really helps me out a lot. Until the next time, peace out, guys.